With a loud boom, the spaceship crashed into the city. It instantly created a huge crater. Looking at the huge spaceship, the humans on the ground were all stunned. However, just as the humans launched the rescue operation, a strange monster appeared in the cabin.
2 to the body, 1 to the head.
This is the latest high-rated American disaster TV series of 2025, Alien Earth Season 1. This web series has an impressive pedigree. It is personally executive produced by sci-fi master Ridley Scott. It topped the global trending charts just half an hour after its release. Without further ado, let's get started. The film is set in 2120, 2 years before the first installment of the Alien franchise. At this point, human civilization, after hundreds of years of development, has finally reached a crossroads of fate. Humans have not only achieved interstellar travel, but also made significant breakthroughs in biotechnology. Among these, the most notable is the research on immortality. Humans have conceived 3 models for this research. First is what we commonly call mechanical ascension. The principle of this technology is to transfer human consciousness into a robot to achieve eternal life. Second is the androids developed by Weyland Corporation in the Alien franchise. This technology can not only retain the human body and senses, but also extend life through continuous regeneration. Finally, there is consciousness virtualization. This technology requires neither a physical body nor senses. Human consciousness is converted into data to become a virtual being. The virtual consciousness can not only be transferred to a mechanical body, but also integrated with androids. Currently, there are 6 companies on Earth conducting in-depth research on this biotechnology. They are Prodigy Technologies, which provides synthetic bodies for androids and aliens, Lynch Corporation, which supplied the brain technology for David in Alien, as well as Demai Corporation and Threshold Corporation, which focus on consciousness data research. Finally, there are our old friends and leaders in android technology, Yutani Corporation and Weyland Corporation. After decades of accumulation, the 6 major tech giants have achieved remarkable success in their respective fields. However, the so-called immortality is still a distant dream. To accelerate technological breakthroughs, with the mediation of various tycoons, Weyland Corporation and Yutani Corporation merged, forming the Weyland-Yutani Corporation that runs through the entire Alien franchise. By learning from each other's strengths, they quickly became a dominant force in the android industry. As Weyland Corporation grew stronger, the other 4 giants were not willing to be left behind. But humans had no idea that the reckless expansion of these giants would bring a catastrophic disaster to human civilization. In the deep space 1.3 billion kilometers away from Earth, a transport spaceship codenamed Maginot is on a mission to return to Earth. This is a research spaceship belonging to Weyland Corporation. Many scientists are in hibernation on the ship, along with a large number of samples and research materials collected from outer space. According to the navigation agreement, the crew members must wake up every 3 months to replenish nutrients. As the system was activated, the crew members woke up one after another from hibernation. In another 4 months, everyone will enter Earth's orbit. However, despite watching the kilometers to Earth decrease, the crew members were not as happy as expected. It turns out that the crew has been away from Earth for many years. They were sent to a planet named Chabuzo for scientific research and exploration. At first, everyone thought this was just an ordinary collection mission, but after arriving on the planet, they encountered a terrifying monster. This monster not only latches onto people's faces, but also parasitizes in human bodies to lay eggs. Many teammates had accidents while carrying out their tasks. Originally, the reward for such a dangerous mission should be very generous, but the high reward promised by the company back then couldn't keep up with the current prices. And this wasn't the most distressing part. The crew had all heard that Earth's technology had reached another level. Earth is now ruled by 5 major tech giants. Among them, a company called Prodigy Technologies is developing the fastest. The company's founder is named Boyka. In just 10 years, he has developed the company to a level comparable to Weyland, and Boyka is still under 30 years old. It's hard to imagine how bright the company's future prospects will be. Faced with the crew's complaints, Jason, the spaceship's commander, wasn't very interested. He is a half-android from Weyland Corporation. Jason's only mission is to safely transport the samples back to Earth. Seeing that the time was almost up, Jason urged the crew to enter hibernation quickly, but the chatting crew had no idea that, on their way back to Earth, the spaceship's laboratory had never stopped researching. Through the continuous efforts of a female scientist, the biological samples they collected have bred multiple absurd versions. Meanwhile, as the spaceship raced toward Earth, on Earth, 1.3 billion kilometers away, Boyka, the founder of Prodigy Technologies, was conducting android research in a laboratory called Dream Island. Compared to the David version of androids developed by Weyland Corporation in 2025, Boyka's research is more focused on humans themselves. The androids he wants are not cold machines. but truly independent thinking beings like humans. To realize this dream, Boyka recruited a large number of terminally ill children from society. The company extracts the children's consciousness and transfers it into android bodies. The androids created in this way not only have the ability to think independently, but also retain human senses and emotions. However, the research didn't go smoothly. Many consciousnesses encountered various accidents after transfer. Some couldn't wake up, while others were mentally slow after waking up. In the end, they could only be discarded. Repeated failures dealt a heavy blow to Boyka. He even suspected that mechanical ascension might not be achievable. But just as Boyka was hesitating whether to continue the research, a girl named Wendy worked a miracle. Wendy's consciousness not only perfectly integrated with the android body, but also had no sequelae. Coupled with the company's android technology, Wendy was the perfect life form Boyka had envisioned. Wendy's success made Boyka convinced that his research direction was correct. But just as Boyka thought he had finally broken through the biological boundary between organic and inorganic matter, a sudden accident interrupted his research. Near Jupiter's orbit, Wayland Corporation's Maginot had arrived in this star system, but at this moment, the spaceship was in chaos. The cabins were filled with the bodies of crew members, figures flashed from time to time in the corridors. It turned out that just as the spaceship entered the solar system, the sample in the spaceship's laboratory leaked for unknown reasons. The escaped monster killed the crew members in hibernation. In the spaceship's control room, Commander Jason was documenting the leakage incident, but halfway through his work, a female crew member arrived at the door. The woman banged on the steel door and begged Jason for help, but as he looked at the woman at the door, Jason didn't open the steel door. Instead, he sealed it shut with an electric welding tool. Watching the ruthless Jason, the woman completely panicked, but before she could turn around, the monster appeared behind her. Despite the woman's desperate struggle, she was eventually brutally killed by the monster. Staring at Jason in the control room, the monster tried to break down the door. Although the steel door was strong, it was child's play for the powerful alien. The monster only slammed into the door a few times and it started to loosen. Yet upon hearing the commotion behind him, Jason remained calm. Just as the monster was about to break through the door, Jason finished his documentation. He activated the safety protocol. He successfully took shelter in the safety pod before the monster broke in. At the same time, the spaceship passed Jupiter and entered Earth's orbit. With no one controlling it, the out-of-control spaceship crashed straight into Earth. The massive spaceship rubbed against the air, leaving a long trail of flame in the sky. The out-of-control spaceship crashed into the downtown area of Pudgy City, a city controlled by Prodigy Technologies. Upon seeing the spaceship crash, the City Hall dispatched rescue teams immediately, but the disaster was far more terrifying than people had imagined. A huge crater was created in the downtown area, debris and cries of agony filled the area. The front half of the spaceship was embedded in a building. The rescue team found a hole in the outer hull of the spaceship. They entered the cabin through the hole, but when they reached the corridor, the rescue team was stunned by what they saw. The cabin was covered in bloodstains everywhere. There were also many severed limbs on the ground. The terrifying scene made Matt, who had just joined the rescue team, feel unwell. But the rescue team didn't know that compared to the severed limbs in the cabin, there was something even more terrifying waiting for them on the spaceship. In the spaceship's main control room, Jason had woken up from the safety pod. Seeing that humans had entered the cabin, Jason immediately reported the location and situation of the spaceship crash to the company. At Prodigy Technologies headquarters, Boyka also learned about the spaceship crash. Upon learning that the spaceship belonged to Wayland, the assistant thought the crash might not be simple. There might be some big secret on the spaceship. Boyka also thought this made sense. Just as he was thinking about what was going on, Wendy arrived at the office. She offered to join the rescue mission. It turned out that Wendy had seen her younger brother Matt in the TV broadcast. She was worried that her brother might be in danger and wanted to go check on him. Boyka also thought this was a practical opportunity. He agreed to let Wendy join the rescue mission, on the condition that she must obey orders. Meanwhile, the rescue team had arrived at the spaceship's laboratory. They discovered the monster sample in the cabin. Staring at the bizarre-looking monster, the leading soldier was very curious. However, the man standing at the door didn't notice that, while his teammates were busy observing the sample, something fell from the cabin ceiling above his head.
2 to the body, 1 to the head.
Staring at the object in the glass container, the two soldiers felt a little scared. After confirming there were no survivors in the laboratory, the leading soldier planned to check other rooms. But as soon as they turned around, they were held hostage by Jason. The soldiers tried to explain that they were part of the rescue team, but Jason paid no heed. He cuffed the two of them. Shortly after Jason left, the man felt something squirming in his chest. He looked down and saw a strange worm at his collar. The worm crawled up his shoulder and onto his face. Before the man could react, the monster latched onto him. The man quickly lost his breath, staring at the tumor on his teammate's shoulder. The other man panicked, but before he could call for help, a worm also appeared on his helmet. The man's fate was predictable. Soon after, Weyland Corporation learned about the spaceship crash. The company's executives immediately contacted Prodigy Technologies, requesting to send a team to secure the spaceship and retrieve their belongings. Upon hearing Weyland's request, Boyka, who had been skeptical about the crash earlier, suddenly realized that this accident might really be an unforeseen incident. It turned out that Weyland Corporation had long been a leader in the long-distance spaceship industry. Weyland monopolized 80% of humanity's transport spaceships. Logically speaking, even if a transport spaceship encountered an accident during a mission, Weyland should have been able to prevent it from crashing. But now, not only had Weyland failed to stop the crash, but the spaceship had also crashed in an area controlled by Prodigy Technologies. This meant that Weyland had lost control of the spaceship. There must be a shocking secret behind this sudden accident, so Boyka refused Weyland's request, suggesting that if they were dissatisfied, they could resolve it through legal channels. But the agitated Boyka didn't know that this was all part of Weyland's deliberate maneuver to lure him in. This spaceship would drag Prodigy Technologies into an irreversible abyss. On the spaceship, the rescue team continued their search and rescue inside the cabin, but after searching for a long time, the team was horrified to find that besides the scattered severed limbs, there wasn't a single survivor on the spaceship. What's even more absurd is that the rescue team conducted a preliminary examination of the deceased crew members and found that the crew had died a week before the spaceship crashed. In other words, the spaceship had encountered the accident while on its way back to Earth. Staring at the severed limbs on the ground, Matt, who was part of the rescue team, felt uneasy. But just as Matt was wondering what had happened to the spaceship, a strange noise came from behind him. But when Matt turned around, there was nothing in the cabin. He didn't pay much attention to it, thinking it was the sound of the spaceship's debris passing through the corridor in the interlayer. The rescue team arrived at the spaceship's laboratory. As soon as they arrived, they were greeted by another horrific sight. A crew member was lying on the ground covered in blood. It seemed that the crew member had been tortured before death. His eyes had been gouged out. The horrific scene made even the experienced rescue team shudder with fear. But this wasn't the most absurd part. Matt found a monitor not far away. A bizarre video popped up on the monitor. A creature was seen parasitizing inside a human body. After devouring the internal organs, the creature burst out of the body. They found the man from the video deep in the laboratory. The man's chest had been torn open. His death was the same as that of the crew member at the door. Staring at the images in the video, the team members all had a bad premonition. The leading squad leader thought there might be something dangerous on the spaceship. To prevent accidents, the leader decided to withdraw first. They would discuss the rescue operation after the main force arrived. The other team members all thought this was a good idea. Leaving the laboratory, the team arrived at the other side of the hole in the spaceship's hull. The situation here was also very bad. The massive spaceship had pierced through the entire building during the crash. Innocent people were trapped under the falling debris. Seeing that people needed help, the rescue team immediately launched the rescue. But as the team members headed downward, Matt felt something dripping onto his shoulder. Staring at the black shadow appearing above his head, Matt realized something was wrong and ran away as fast as he could. But due to excessive nervousness, Matt misjudged the distance and fell through a crack. The team members ahead spotted the monster immediately, but as soon as one of them raised his gun, the monster disappeared. Matt looked back and saw the monster chasing after him again. In a panic, he rushed into the corridor. He hid in an elevator just before the monster caught up. After calming down, Matt took out his walkie-talkie to tell the team members to evacuate quickly. But when he turned it on, he found that the radio was jammed. Even though Matt tried hard to suppress his fear, describing the monster's appearance and his current location to the team, there was no response from the walkie-talkie. Meanwhile, Wendy's team arrived at the World Trade Center. The authorities set up a rescue command center on the open ground. Captain Aaron learned about the on-site situation roughly from the person in charge. The crashed spaceship had no leaks, and the cabin damage wasn't very serious. The rescue team was entering in an orderly manner. But while Aaron was getting updated by the person in charge, Wendy saw on the monitor that her brother was trapped in the elevator on the 67th floor. Worried about Matt, Wendy rushed straight to the building. Aaron was about to chase after her when he received a task from Boyka to retrieve the navigation logs. Aaron had to split the team into two groups. He led one group to investigate the spaceship's navigation logs, while Wendy and Sly went to rescue Matt. But as soon as they entered the cabin, Aaron and his team encountered a strange plant in the corridor. The plant's vines wrapped around the overhead passage, with a fruit-like object hanging below. Staring at the strange thing, Aaron believed that the spaceship's crash might be related to this strange plant. He told the team members to find something to collect some samples to take back to the base for research. But when 3 team members entered the nearby laboratory, they were shocked by what they saw inside. The 2 soldiers who had been tied up by Jason earlier were already blown to death. The leading team member was about to get closer to check, when he saw a red tumor rolling out of the soldier's chest. Staring at the things in the laboratory, the team members realized immediately that Weyland Corporation might have brought back something extraordinary from outer space, but before anyone could react, another strange noise came from the corner. One team member looked back and saw a cat not far away. The team member thought it was a stray cat and didn't pay much attention, but just as he was about to turn around, a large-eyed octopus burst out of the cat's body and rushed toward him. Fortunately, a teammate nearby reacted quickly. He picked up a basin from the ground and covered the monster with it. The scene of the team performing their task was also transmitted to Boyka's computer via the camera. Seeing the plant and the monster on the spaceship, Boyka also became interested. He told Aaron to bring all these things back for him to see. Aaron accessed the system and checked the spaceship's navigation logs. Through decoding, he quickly figured out the spaceship's mission. At this moment, Aaron found 6 strange eggs in the spaceship's cabin through the monitor. After interpreting the spaceship's logs, Aaron realized that these eggs might be one of the samples Weyland Corporation brought back from deep space. He checked the team members' positions and found that Wendy was exactly in that area. Aaron realized the importance of the samples. He told his men to go meet up with Wendy, then seal off that area. No one was allowed to approach the area until the company's support arrived. Aaron also reminded his men not to touch these eggs under any circumstances. While Aaron was sending a reminder to Wendy, Matt, who had been separated from the team, met a teammate at a corner. Seeing his teammate, Matt's tense nerves relaxed a little, he asked the teammate if he had encountered that kind of monster, but the teammate knew nothing about the monster. At this moment, classical music started playing in a nearby room. Matt looked back and saw a group of wealthy people partying in the next room. The team member tried to get the wealthy people to evacuate, but they didn't take it seriously and slammed the door shut arrogantly. Staring at the arrogant wealthy people, Matt and his teammate were both stunned. Angry, Matt wanted to force them to evacuate, but just as he turned around, he saw the previous monster appearing behind his teammate. At Matt's warning, the teammate turned around slowly, and was so scared by what he saw that he almost wet his pants. The teammate reacted and immediately opened fire. The scene instantly descended into chaos. The sound of gunfire in the corridor annoyed the wealthy people. One of them opened the door to complain but saw the monster. The terrified, wealthy man ran back into the room and found there were still prey inside. The monster rushed in. When Matt looked back, the room was already in chaos. Severed limbs were scattered everywhere. The wealthy man from just now was only half his original self. Staring at the wealthy man on the ground, Matt finally realized that the crew members on the spaceship had been attacked by this kind of monster. Just as Matt was panicking, the monster jumped down from the second floor. Fortunately, Matt reacted quickly. He dodged when the monster jumped down. But before he could stand up, the monster stretched out its tentacles and grabbed his foot. Just as Matt thought he was doomed, a red laser beam appeared from behind. The attacked alien fell to the ground instantly. Seeing Jason, Matt thought he was part of the rescue team. He was about to thank him, but Jason pointed his gun at him. The unlucky Matt was shot flying again. In a daze, he saw Jason spraying a strange slime on the monster. The slime solidified into a net and wrapped the monster up. After wrapping it up, Jason dragged the monster out of the room. However, as soon as Jason reached the door, he was spotted by a passing team. He tried to pretend to be a survivor, but the wrapped monster suddenly moved. The rescue team found the Weyland Corporation logo on Jason. They recognized his identity as an android. The leading squad leader thought Jason was sent by Weyland Corporation and ordered his men to tie him up. But the squad leader didn't notice that as he approached, the wrapped alien had broken free. The alien quickly took down the rescue team members. Listening to the screams behind him, Jason stood motionless, not daring to move. The alien also noticed Jason, but because the android's structure was different from that of humans, it couldn't confirm if Jason was human. Just as the alien was about to get closer to check, shouts from the rescue team came from behind. The alien was lured away by the shouts. When Jason turned around, the scene was already covered in blood. The rescue team from just now had been wiped out. Meanwhile, Matt, who had been knocked unconscious by Jason, woke up. He wanted to leave, but when he turned around, he was attracted by a baseball. He looked closely and found that this baseball was actually the one Jackson used to win the championship in the 1977 World Series. He recalled a scene from his childhood. At that time, the young Matt had squatted in front of the TV with his father to watch the game. While Matt was reminiscing about the past, Wendy also arrived here with her teammate. Staring at her brother whom she hadn't seen in years, Wendy couldn't hide her excitement. But Matt didn't recognize Wendy. Matt thought they were survivors. He told them about the monster in the building and suggested they evacuate quickly. But Wendy told him not to panic. They were the rescue team. Learning that the two were androids, Matt was very surprised. He had thought the main force had arrived. At this moment, Wendy received a message from Aaron. Aaron told Wendy to go to the warehouse to meet Smith. The company's support was on the way. Upon receiving the order, Wendy took Matt back to the cabin. On the way, Wendy told her brother about her identity, learning that his sister, who was supposed to be dead, was actually alive. Matt was completely stunned. It turned out that in Matt's memory, his sister had died when he was very young. He had even attended Wendy's funeral. How could she still be alive? Wendy told Matt about the company's research. It turned out that Boyka had found their father back then, telling him about his in-depth research on androids. He wanted Wendy to participate in the experiment. As a condition, the company would not only give the family a large sum of money, but also give Wendy a chance to cure her terminal illness. Although he knew the company's research had little chance of success, their father still wanted to give it a try. If it really worked, at least Wendy could survive. So he handed Wendy over to the company and told the outside world that his daughter had died. Because their father had signed a contract with the company back then, Wendy, as an android, had to work for the company for the rest of her life. That's why she hadn't contacted Matt all these years. Matt found it hard to accept Wendy's explanation. At this moment, shouts from their teammate came from afar. Wendy went to the corridor and saw the eggs Aaron had mentioned. 6 eggs were neatly placed in the center of the room. Curious, Matt wanted to get closer to check, but he didn't notice that the alien had set up a protective device in the room. As he approached, the mechanism in the room was activated. The moment the blue light disappeared, Wendy heard a strange low-frequency sound wave. As the light faded, the alien in the distance sensed that its lair had been invaded. The monster rushed toward the warehouse. In an instant, Matt had no idea that his actions had attracted the monster. He walked up to one egg and found that the top of each egg had cracks. He speculated that this might be a sign that they were about to hatch. If these eggs belonged to that monster, then things were going to get serious. He wanted to contact the headquarters to send someone over to handle it immediately, but before Matt could take out his walkie-talkie, the monster appeared in the corner. Matt didn't have time to react, and fell through the hole in the spaceship. Seeing her brother being captured, Wendy told Riley to wait for support on the spot. She went down to the bottom of the spaceship through the hole. Passing through a corridor, she found the captured Matt among a pile of containers. Matt was trapped in a container by the monster's slime, but just as she was about to rescue him, Matt saw a black shadow flash past the door. Wendy turned around and saw it was the same monster from before, but as it looked at Wendy, the monster didn't attack and instead turned around and left. Staring at the departing monster, Wendy felt something was wrong, but before she could react, the sound of the monster walking came from the top of the container. Wendy picked up the dagger in her hand and stabbed the monster above directly, but just as she thought she had killed the monster's blood corroded the container and the dagger. But before the two could react, the monster overturned the container. When Matt opened his eyes again, several gaps had been torn open at the edge of the container. It was obvious how sharp the monster's claws were. Matt carefully looked outside through the iron hook on the ground, but there was no sign of the monster outside. Just as Matt thought the monster might have left, a black tentacle suddenly shot out from behind. Before Matt could stand up, the monster pounced at him. Staring at the tender-skinned Matt, the alien drooled again. However, just as the monster opened its black fangs, Wendy suddenly appeared. She hooked the alien's neck with a grappling hook. Wendy told Matt to activate the gate, while she dragged the monster toward a nearby container. Hearing Wendy's shout, Matt hurried to the control switch. He pressed the switch, and the huge steel gate began to lower. But just as Wendy was about to throw the monster in, the rope hooking the monster suddenly snapped. The unlucky Wendy was also dragged inside. Seeing this, Matt tried to open the steel gate, but the controller malfunctioned. Matt smashed open the controller and found the circuit to open the door. But as he was connecting the wires, a sudden roar from the monster came from inside the container. When Matt opened the steel gate, the monster had been chopped in half by Wendy. Seeing that Wendy was safe, Matt's hanging heart finally settled. But just as he was about to take Wendy away, a white unknown liquid dripped from Wendy's head. It turned out that Wendy had injured her head while fighting the monster earlier. Matt was about to go check on her when he felt chest discomfort. He looked back and realized that he had also been seriously injured during the fight with the monster. The two fainted inside the container. Meanwhile, Aaron had roughly figured out the experimental samples carried by the spaceship. Through the laboratory logs, in addition to the vine monster and large-eyed octopus they found in the corridor, the spaceship also carried facehuggers and 6 eggs. All the monsters on the spaceship shared a single parent, which was the alien. All the monsters they had seen were other types, bred by Weyland scientists, using biotechnology on the way back to Earth. Reading the records in the logs, Aaron felt confused. Logically speaking, after discovering these creatures, Weyland should have conducted secret research on a planet in outer space. This would not only ensure safety but also keep the secret hidden. Why would Weyland bring these things back to Earth? Could it be that Weyland had discovered something in the monster's genes that made the company risk bringing the monsters back to Earth? Although he didn't know the big secret behind this, Aaron could still sense that These monsters were extraordinary. He found containers and packed up all the samples and monsters in the laboratory. Seeing the footage sent back by the team, Boyka was also very excited. He never thought Weyland Corporation would make such a big mistake, giving away the alien lifeforms they had worked so hard to obtain in outer space to Prodigy Technologies. Boyka decided to allocate half of the company's funds to establish a new research institute. But the joyful Boyka didn't know that a conspiracy targeting Prodigy Technologies had already begun. In the warehouse, Smith had also arrived at the scene. He told Riley about the monsters they had found in the laboratory. But as Smith was boasting about how he fought the one-eyed octopus, Jason suddenly appeared behind them. He held them hostage and told them to stay away from the eggs. From Smith, Jason learned that the spaceship had crashed in Prodigy Technologies' territory. Although somewhat surprised, Jason didn't say anything. He picked up 2 data cables and connected them to his forehead. As the program started, the data in Jason's mind was transmitted back to Weyland Corporation. Smith and Riley thought Jason was also an android from their company. But before they could react, Jason, who had finished the transmission, suddenly grabbed Riley by the neck. It turned out that when Riley and Smith were chatting earlier, Jason had heard them talk about their parents. But androids didn't have parents or relatives, so he speculated that the two might be Prodigy Technologies' new models. Out of a casual desire to gather information, Jason wanted to find out some information. Fortunately, Aaron arrived just in time. He and Jason were androids of the same generation, so he knew the other's identity. As the two sides confronted each other, Jason noticed that the eggs nearby were squirming. This was a sign that the monsters were about to hatch. Aaron, who had read the logs, knew that Jason was the only survivor of the spaceship, and many data in the laboratory logs were missing. It was obvious that the missing data must be stored in Jason's mind. Aaron wanted to find a way to keep him, but before Aaron could act, Jason turned around, jumped down the hole, and disappeared without a trace. Aaron immediately sent his men to search for Jason everywhere on the spaceship, but the search and rescue team checked every corner and still couldn't find Jason. After a day and night of searching, the scene was quickly cleaned up. Worried about unexpected accidents, Aaron didn't stay long. He immediately returned to the headquarters with the monsters and laboratory samples. Staring at the monster samples Aaron brought back, Boyka at the door was somewhat shocked. Although Prodigy Technologies had surpassed Weyland in popularity in recent years, in terms of industrial spaceships and biotechnology, the company was still far behind Weyland. Boyka believed that with these things, the company would be able to keep pace with Weyland this time. Learning that Wendy was injured while fighting the monster, Boyka was a little disappointed, but he didn't blame her too much. After all the androids were still in the experimental stage. As long as the follow-up research could be completed to turn them into super soldiers, a body was just a trivial matter. After confirming that all samples had been isolated, Boyka couldn't wait to go to the laboratory. Staring at the squirming eggs, the curious Boyka couldn't help but want to get closer to check, but was chased out by Aaron. Because these eggs were extremely dangerous, they might parasitize on humans, eventually leading to death. Upon hearing Aaron's reminder, Boyka quickly exited the laboratory. Realizing how terrifying the monsters were, Boyka immediately adjusted his strategy. He assigned this experimental area to Aaron and prohibited any humans from entering. In addition, he also dispatched a large number of androids, telling Aaron to conduct research and collection on these samples. While Prodigy Technologies was busy, Jason, who had escaped from the spaceship, wasn't idle either. He disguised himself as a worker and came to a food street. While a gluttonous man was eating meat, he stole the mobile phone on the table. As soon as he got the phone, Jason contacted the company. But the person who answered the call wasn't his superior, but a new person in charge. It turned out that during Jason's trip to outer space, Weyland Corporation had changed 2 generations of leaders. Jason reported that the samples had been taken by Prodigy Technologies. Although the samples were lost, all the data from the laboratory had been transmitted back by him. The person in charge wanted Jason to come back first. The company needed a detailed report on this mission, but Jason told the person in charge to download it from the server himself. His mission was to bring the samples back to the headquarters. This was the work of his life. Upon hearing Jason's words, the person in charge didn't insist and just let him arrange it himself. Meanwhile, after several hours of effort, Wendy, who had been sent to the maintenance room, finally woke up. But as soon as she opened her eyes, she heard a strange low-frequency sound wave. She remembered this sound. She had heard it once before on the spaceship. At that time, when this sound appeared, the monster had followed closely. Could there be a monster in the base too? She followed the sound and left the room. She arrived at the newly isolated laboratory. In the laboratory, Aaron had already started sampling the alien eggs. As the knife cut across, a transparent film appeared on the egg. The formed alien inside the film was constantly squirming. Sensing danger, the facehugger inside the egg began to struggle, but the underdeveloped facehugger couldn't leave the protection of the egg yet. It was directly taken out by Aaron and placed on the experimental table. as the facehugger was attacked. That strange soundwave fluctuated up and down. Wendy, who heard the sound, felt a splitting headache. While sampling, Aaron found a kind of translucent tadpole-like creature inside the facehugger. He took out the tadpole-like creatures and soaked them in nutrient solution. But Aaron didn't notice that when the tadpole-like creatures were taken out, the eggs stored in the isolation cabin seemed to move slightly, and when Wendy saw the tadpole-like creatures, she also sensed a powerful sound wave. The sound made her extremely uncomfortable and she fainted directly. Aaron didn't notice Wendy behind him. He put the extracted tadpole-like creatures into a glass jar containing a lung. This lung was removed during Matt's surgery. Following the principle of not wasting, Aaron used it as an experimental sample. The moment they smelled blood, the tadpole-like creatures drilled into the inside of the lung, but no one noticed that. While Aaron was researching the samples, the team member who had been attacked by the one-eyed octopus earlier was acting strangely. For some reason, she always felt something in her eyes. At this moment, Aaron and the others found the unconscious Wendy at the laboratory door. They hurried to send Wendy to the treatment room. After adjustments by the staff, Wendy woke up soon, but the awakened Wendy had lost her hearing. It turned out that during the inspection just now, the staff found that Wendy's auditory system had received a large number of low-frequency sound waves. This sound wave caused problems with her body. To prevent Wendy from being further affected, the staff turned off her auditory system. In addition, the staff also discovered a strange phenomenon. The closer Wendy got to those alien monsters, the stronger that sound wave became, especially when Aaron extracted that kind of translucent creature. The intensity of the sound wave reached its peak. After hearing the staff's report, Aaron found it incredible. Could these creatures be communicating? But they were all androids. Why hadn't they heard it? At this moment, Boyka, Matt, and others also arrived at the scene. Seeing that Wendy was safe, Matt was very happy. Boyka found an excuse to dismiss Aaron and the others. Immediately after, he told the staff to turn on Wendy's auditory system again. Wendy, who had regained her hearing, recounted what happened the night before. When she was unconscious, she vaguely heard a strange sound wave. Guided by the sound wave, she came to the laboratory. When Aaron extracted the tadpole-like creatures from the facehugger, Wendy heard a scream.
The eggs?
No. It's a baby. The baby was screaming.
After hearing Wendy's analysis, Boyka found it incredible. Could it be that the alien creatures wanted to communicate with everyone through Wendy? He told the staff to enhance Wendy's auditory system, wanting to see if that sound wave still existed. As the auditory system was gradually activated, Wendy heard that faint sound wave again. Staring at the sound wave graph on the monitor, Boyka looked at the other androids nearby, but none of them had heard the sound Wendy mentioned. It seemed that only Wendy could hear this kind of sound. Boyka wanted to know what the alien creatures were saying, but Wendy didn't understand the alien language. She could only infer the emotional changes of these creatures from the intensity of the sound waves. Boyka told Wendy to amplify the sound wave, trying to play it at a frequency audible to humans. Wendy compiled the sound wave as requested. After hearing the sound played by Wendy, Boyka realized that the creatures Wayland had brought back from space were not just simple beasts. They were more like an intelligent civilization. The sudden discovery filled Boyka with uncontrollable excitement, but along with the surprise, he also fell into deep worry. The assistant beside him also found this strange. The assistant speculated that Wayland Corporation might have long known that these creatures had the ability to communicate, and that they might have already deciphered the message contained in the sound waves. The assistant was worried that these creatures were too dangerous. He suggested handing them over to Wayland, since the company was not good at researching alien creatures. In fact, the assistant's speculation was correct. In Aliens and Prometheus, the androids of Wayland Corporation had communicated with the aliens. It was clear that Wayland had long mastered the aliens' language. However, the assistant's proposal was rejected by Boyka. With his sharp intuition, he realized that these creatures must have other unknown secrets. If they could be deciphered, it would be a major discovery for both the company and even humanity. The appearance of these biological samples also made Boyka firmly believe that this was an important turning point for Prodigy Technologies. Whether they could break the technological monopoly of the other four giants, the aliens would be the key. Boyka told the assistant to speed up the research progress. They had to figure out the secrets of these creatures quickly. However, the arrogant Boyka didn't know that, since the spaceship crashed in the city center, Prodigy Technologies' ambition to dominate had entered the countdown. Urged by Boyka, Aaron accelerated the observation and research of the samples. The subject of this research was the one-eyed octopus that had attacked team member Lily earlier. To better collect data, Aaron got a lamb named Dolly. The staff attached various detection instruments all over the lamb's body. As the steel door slowly opened, the one-eyed octopus crawled out of the passage, staring at the lamb not far away. The octopus stretched out its tentacles and hooked the lamb's head. With a sudden launch, the octopus flew into the air, its tentacles wrapped around the lamb, and in the stunned eyes of everyone, the octopus actually drilled into the lamb's body through its eye socket. It replaced the lamb's original eye. Staring at the parasitized lamb, Aaron and Boyka beside him were both stunned. But what surprised them even more was yet to come. The lamb that had just been killed by the monster came back to life, but the revived lamb had transformed into another form. It even learned to stand like a human. The monster controlled the lamb to carefully observe the surrounding environment. At this moment, the staff in charge of checking the data noticed something was wrong. The lamb's data had completely changed. The lamb seemed to have become smarter than before. After hearing the report from his subordinate, Aaron finally realized that after the monster parasitized the lamb, it didn't control the other's brain, nerves and body, but directly became the lamb's brain and took control of the entire body. Aaron found it hard to comprehend. How did this monster manage to do that? At this moment, Aaron noticed an even more terrifying scene. He found that the lamb was observing them. Boyka beside him also noticed this. He threw the baseball in his hand to deliberately make a sound. Drawing the lamb's attention, staring at the thinking lamb, Boyka could confirm that this creature had a certain level of thinking ability. If it could think, it meant that communication was possible. While busy in the laboratory, Arthur found his wife Lila. Arthur was very dissatisfied with Boyka's allocation of a large amount of resources to the alien laboratory. Their android experiment had already entered the second phase. The top priority now was to complete the second phase of testing. But now most of the company's resources had been diverted, and their experiment had come to a standstill. Arthur wanted Lila to persuade Boyka to focus on the second phase first. But although Lila was the person in charge of the android project, she had no status in Boyka's mind. All they could do now was complete the second phase of testing as soon as possible, and make sure there were no mistakes. As long as they could achieve impressive results in the third phase, they could pull the company's focus back. But the more Lila feared something, the more it happened. While the two were talking, Lily suddenly called out to her.
I'm pregnant.
What?
I'm gonna have a baby.
No, that's impossible. You're a machine.
I'm not a machine. Why would you say that?
Upon hearing Lily's words, Arthur and Lila were both stunned. They had not equipped the androids with reproductive functions when designing them. How could Lily possibly be pregnant? Lila thought Lily had recently watched some TV drama, or heard something from somewhere. She took Lily back to the room, wanting to find out what had caused Lily to think she was pregnant. But halfway through the conversation, Lila noticed something was wrong. Lily not only vividly described the feeling of being pregnant, but also said she could feel something moving in her belly. Lila tried to explain to Lily that androids couldn't get pregnant, but her words suddenly angered Lily.
I said something!
Fortunately, Lila reacted quickly. She pretended she was joking, which finally calmed the irritable Lily down. Staring at Lily's reaction, Lila thought of the alien monsters the company had been researching recently. Could it be that Lily had encountered a monster during the mission? She pretended to pour tea and quietly pressed the alarm. A few minutes later, 2 security guards arrived at the office. Lila found an excuse and told Lily to go back to her room with the 2 security guards first. Lily didn't think much of it, turned around and left the office. But after Lily left, Lila told the leading security guard to lock Lily's room and not let her leave, and not let anyone contact her either. She even activated a level 3 incident. From this, we can tell that Prodigy Technologies androids have obvious flaws, especially in terms of mentality and thinking. Meanwhile, Boyka's assistant found Matt. The assistant wanted Matt to join the company, so that he could see Wendy every day. But if Matt refused, he would not only have to pay a large sum of money for the previous synthetic surgery, but also cut off all contact with Wendy. Upon hearing the assistant's terms, Matt was completely stunned. How could such a big company use such low-level tactics? But the lung had already been implanted, and it couldn't be removed now. Staring at the model on the table, Matt asked a question he was very concerned about. He wanted to know if his sister's consciousness was really in that body, and if that person was still his sister. But the assistant said these were actually 2 questions. One was practical, and the other was the core of existentialism. The assistant's answer was ambiguous, but the intelligent Matt still realized that, although Wendy had his sister's memories and way of thinking, she wasn't his real sister in essence. To continue keeping in touch with Wendy, Matt had to agree to join the company. To Matt's greater surprise, to make him stay at ease, Boyka even hired the entire rescue team. But Boyka didn't do this out of kindness. Instead, through observation, he found that after Wendy met Matt, her physical and mental state had undergone significant changes, which was of great help to the research. But Boyka didn't know that, Although the bond of family could stabilize an android's emotions, it was also a flaw. At the back mountain of the research institute, Riley was sitting on a stone chatting with Jason. But Jason wasn't at the company, he was thousands of miles away. It turned out that when he had held Riley hostage earlier, Jason had secretly implanted a chip in Riley's neck. This chip allowed the two to communicate. Because of his immature mentality, Riley didn't realize Jason's danger. He even became close friends with Jason, sharing everything with each other. Through communicating with Riley, Jason obtained some information about the new androids, but Riley didn't know much. He only knew that the company had transferred his consciousness into a body, and then they became androids. But Jason's real purpose wasn't to figure out the technology of the new androids. He wanted to use Riley to retrieve the alien samples that had been taken. He deceived Riley, saying that those samples were his treasures, but had been stolen by the company. Jason encouraged Riley to sneak into the laboratory and steal the alien eggs for him, to help his friend. Riley actually agreed. But Riley didn't know that all the daily activities of androids were under the company's surveillance. His conversation with Jason had long been discovered by Aaron, but as he listened to their conversation, Aaron didn't tell Boyka about it. The naive Riley still didn't know he was being used. He happily returned to his room, but as soon as he entered, he saw Aaron waiting for him. Seeing Aaron, Riley was also stunned. But Aaron didn't mention his private communication with Jason. Instead, he talked about the three monkeys in his room: the monkey that sees no evil, the monkey that hears no evil, and the monkey that speaks no evil. They are symbols in Buddhist teachings to avoid evil thoughts and deeds, but with the passage of time, their meaning has changed. After talking to himself, Aaron asked Riley, if he did something bad, would Riley report him? Aaron didn't wait for Riley's answer and turned around to leave, leaving Riley standing there stunned. Riley thought this was just an ordinary test. After nightfall, Riley quietly went to the laboratory, but as soon as he reached the door, he met his friend Kashu. Kashu was now Aaron's assistant, specifically responsible for guarding the laboratory. Riley made an excuse, saying that Supervisor Arthur had sent him to get something from the laboratory, but when asked what he needed to get, Riley couldn't answer. He thought Riley had been careless and hadn't heard clearly. He told Riley to go to the lounge nearby to think about it. Seeing that he couldn't keep making up excuses, Riley had to find an excuse to leave the laboratory. Coming to the back mountain, Riley told Jason about the failed mission, but before he could finish, the voice of his mother suddenly came from the other end of the phone.
Arush,
Mummy?
we love you, beta.
It turned out that Jason had found Riley's family using his real name. Upon hearing his mother's voice, Riley could no longer suppress the longing in his heart. Jason took the opportunity to make a request. He wanted Riley to help retrieve the alien samples taken by Prodigy Technologies. As long as he could complete this task, he would find a way to let Riley meet his mother. But Riley was just an experimental subject and couldn't enter the laboratory, let alone access the samples. But Jason told him not to worry. He had a way to let Riley bring the samples out. Riley only needed to bring a person into the laboratory to get close to that egg. The egg would hatch automatically, and the creature inside would attach to the person's face. Riley just needed to safely take the person out while they were unconscious, keep them detained for a day or two, and then he would take over the alien sample. Upon hearing Jason's plan, Riley thought it was a bit risky. If the company found out, he would be ruined. But Jason assured him, the company would never find out, and the person he brought in wouldn't die. Reassured by Jason's promise, the mother missing Riley finally agreed, but the two didn't know that their plan was being monitored by Aaron the entire time. Staring at the egg in the laboratory, Aaron wore a thoughtful expression. Meanwhile, Boyka found Wendy. He wanted Wendy to try to learn those low-frequency sound waves, to figure out what the alien creatures were communicating, but Wendy had no contact with the monsters, and no one had taught her the monsters' language. Even if she wanted to learn, she couldn't understand. But Boyka didn't think so. He believed that since the monsters let Wendy hear their voices, they must want her to be a communication medium. Wendy just hadn't found a way to interpret them yet. Boyka assured Wendy, as long as she could decipher the monsters' language, he would let Matt stay in the company to accompany her forever. Upon hearing Boyka's terms, Wendy was very happy. Even though she didn't know how to decipher it, Wendy couldn't wait to hook pinkies with Boyka. To seal the deal, after getting Boyka's promise, Wendy hurried to the laboratory. She went to the glass tank where Aaron had conducted experiments earlier. She remembered that the sound wave was emitted by that kind of tadpole-like creature, but Wendy observed the glass tank for a long time, and the alien inside showed no response. At this moment, Wendy remembered that previous sound wave. She tried to play it. Seeing the reaction in the glass tank, Wendy realized it was working. She increased the frequency and playback speed. The alien hiding inside also became restless, but the alien still had no intention of coming out. Just as Wendy was wondering, an accident happened. The glass tank suddenly shattered. A black figure rushed out. Wendy looked up and saw that the black figure was a small black snake-like creature. She tried to get closer, but the alien stared cautiously at its surroundings, assuming an attacking posture. Wendy played that sound wave again. Upon hearing the sound, the alien lowered its guard, and even took the initiative to approach. Seeing that Wendy could actually communicate with the alien, Aaron outside was also stunned. While Wendy was trying to communicate with the alien, Jason also returned to Wayland Corporation's headquarters. Having been away from the company for 65 years, Jason met the company's current person in charge. He told the person in charge why the spaceship had crashed, and how it had crashed. The timeline goes back 17 days before the Maginot was supposed to reach Earth. On the noon of that day, the sleeping Jason was suddenly woken up by an on-duty crew member. The crew member told Jason that a fire had broken out in the storage cabin for unknown reasons. 2 sealed alien samples had accidentally leaked, killing the captain and another crew member named Brown. Learning of the sample leakage, Jason rushed to the medical cabin immediately. He saw 2 facehuggers attached to the captain's and Brown's faces. The doctor tried to remove the creatures, but the creatures' tails tightened around the 2 men's necks. He cut off the tail of one facehugger, only to find that the facehugger's blood had corroded the captain's neck. From the science officer Nicole, Jason learned the whole story. The alarm in the storage cabin had suddenly gone off, activating the sprinklers. The captain and Brown had arrived one after another to put out the open fire. During this period, 2 storage cabins were opened, causing the arthropod eggs to hatch. As for the cause of the fire, it is still unknown. Upon hearing Nicole's speculation, Jason felt something was wrong. The storage cabin is the highest level area on the spaceship. No one can enter without the captain's authorization. How could this area suddenly catch fire? Furthermore, all samples are stored frozen at low temperatures. Even if there was a circuit failure, it couldn't thaw instantly. In other words, someone had entered this area and thawed 2 samples before the fire broke out. Although it's unknown who did it, this isn't the time to dwell on it. Since the captain was killed, the captain's position is now temporarily held by Lena. Considering the danger of the aliens, Lena wanted to exile the 2 people killed by the monsters along with the aliens into outer space. However, Lena's proposal was rejected by Nicole. It turns out that Wayland Corporation has a rule. Once someone is parasitized by an alien, they must be placed in a hibernation pod and stored frozen until returning to Earth. Although the situation is somewhat bad, it is still within control. Jason, in his capacity as director of security, began assigning tasks. He told Lena and the others to first put Brown back into the hibernation pod. As for the captain, the facehugger that killed him was already dead, so his body could be discarded into outer space. He planned to go to the storage cabin to check why the cabin had caught fire, but as he reached the corridor, Jason met a maintenance worker and learned that the previous fire had damaged the navigation system and engine relays. Now the spaceship, like a missile, had lost control. Upon hearing the maintenance worker's words, Jason finally realized that this sample leakage was by no means an accident. He told the maintenance worker to speed up the repairs, insisting that they must be completed before the spaceship reaches Earth, otherwise the consequences would be unimaginable. Meanwhile, Nicole and the others had arrived at the laboratory. She carefully inspected all samples and confirmed there were no leaks. The crew also sent the parasitized Brown back to the hibernation pod. Staring at the creature on Brown's face, the doctor began complaining about the mission.
Not a victory for the enemy of reason.
What does that mean?
It means this space bug is proof of how stupid smart people can be.
Over the years, the 5 major companies, in order to control the entire human civilization, have been secretly engaging in various power struggles. Although no one knew why the company would risk bringing these creatures back to Earth, the doctor still thought such an act was full of danger and uncertainty. If the samples were to leak on Earth, all of humanity would be affected. After confirming that the hibernation pod was activated, the doctor prepared to leave with his assistant, but as he turned around, he saw Mr. Deng staring blankly in front of another hibernation pod. A female crew member was lying inside the pod, staring at Mr. Deng's obsessed gaze. The doctor immediately understood what he was thinking. He gave a word of warning, but the 3 of them didn't notice that shortly after they left, the facehugger that was supposed to be frozen suddenly moved. It was obvious that the temperature in the hibernation pod wasn't low enough to put the facehugger into hibernation. Meanwhile, Jason had also arrived at the storage cabin. The warehouse stored all the biological samples they had found on the planet. Some samples could be stored at low temperatures, but others couldn't. To prevent leaks and ensure protection, the company had specially built a batch of special storage cabinets. These cabinets were not only equipped with basic life support systems, but also allowed the biological samples inside to enter low-temperature hibernation. If the storage cabinet was opened abruptly, it would automatically lock and trigger an alarm. However, when Jason looked for the leaking cabinet, he found that it had already been opened. There were no signs of prying, and even the alarm had not been triggered. Not far down the corridor, Jason found a corroded hole. He looked down and saw that the corrosion had penetrated 3 layers of deck. Judging from the corrosion marks, this must have been caused by the facehugger's blood dripping down. Jason went to the monitoring room to review the footage from the incident. At that time, A fire had suddenly broken out in the cabin, immediately triggering the alarm. As soon as they heard the alarm, the captain and Brown had rushed to the area, but as the two were putting out the fire, a facehugger had quietly approached from behind. The unlucky Brown was ambushed by the creature, and the captain was also ambushed by another creature when he tried to help. Jason checked the surveillance footage before the incident to see if there were any abnormalities, but after searching for a long time, he found nothing. No one had entered the storage cabin before the sample leakage. Could this leakage really be an accident? Just as Jason was wondering, a black shadow suddenly flashed across the opposite monitor. Jason paused the footage and observed it carefully. After careful observation, Jason soon detected something unusual. The day before the fire, someone had entered the cabin. The intruder was very familiar with the cabin and had avoided all surveillance. But Jason couldn't figure out how the intruder had opened the storage cabinet, which required the captain's authorization. Although the surveillance didn't capture the intruder, Jason was certain that the fire in the cabin must have been set by this intruder. He found the maintenance worker, pulled up the cabin's blueprints, and wanted to see where the intruder had entered the storage cabin from. The senior maintenance worker thought of the air vents. There was exactly an air vent above the storage cabin. If someone wanted to sneak in unnoticed, this would be the best route. Upon hearing the senior maintenance worker's words, Jason also thought it made sense, but the air vents in the cabin were interconnected, leading to all areas, making it impossible to trace. It seemed that to find the intruder, they would have to screen through the duty roster. While Jason was investigating the intruder, Lena, who had become the acting captain, wasn't idle either. She was updating her identity in the system. Worried about the danger posed by the samples, Lena wanted to destroy the leaked ones, but the system informed her that the samples had priority over everything else, even higher than the crew in her own rank. As long as the samples were still alive, no one could destroy them. If Lena violated this rule, the system would revoke her control authority. After seeing the system's response, Lena realized that their lives were worth less than some creatures. But Lena didn't know that the disaster had just begun. As everyone was busy with their own tasks, a loud explosion suddenly echoed through the spaceship. Hearing the noise, Lena, Jason, and the others rushed to the control room immediately. From the senior maintenance worker, everyone learned that someone had just blown up a section of the cabin, creating a hole. The hole had caused fuel to leak, and now they only had 8% fuel left. If they couldn't complete the repairs within 24 hours, the spaceship would crash into Earth like a missile. Lena felt that this sudden incident had exceeded the normal safety level. She wanted to wake up all the crew members, but before she could activate the wake-up procedure, another accident occurred. Hearing the alarm, the crew rushed to the hibernation area, but when they arrived, they were greeted by a bizarre sight. Brown's hibernation pod had a large hole in it, and the alien inside had disappeared without a trace. The doctor remembered the previous report that facehuggers lay eggs inside human bodies, which eventually develop into another terrifying monster. The doctor suggested waking up the other crew members to form a search team to search the spaceship. But Jason, who knew how terrifying the aliens were, rejected this proposal. If they woke up the crew members hastily, it would only make them prey for the aliens. The best course of action now wasn't to wake anyone up, since aliens only attack living creatures. To be on the safe side, Jason distributed weapons to everyone. He began searching the cabin, hoping to find the alien. Meanwhile, Nicole had no idea that the alien had escaped again. She was conducting experimental observations on a group of ticks genetically modified with alien DNA. She put a mouse into the container, and the ticks, which had been starved for 2 weeks, began feeding on the mouse. But Nicole, who was busy with her work, didn't notice that one tick had climbed to the top of the container. These ticks had actually learned how to open the container. The one-eyed octopus nearby noticed the escaped tick. To cover for its kin, the octopus tapped the container with its tentacles to draw Nicole's attention. Staring at the restless octopus, Nicole decided to put the container back on the shelf. But Nicole didn't notice that as she turned around, the escaped tick had already climbed onto the table. The tick crawled onto the water glass and laid some eggs inside. Hearing the doctor shout, Nicole looked back and saw the escaped tick wriggling in the sandwich. The doctor quickly picked up a tool and put the escaped tick back into the container. Nicole also realized her carelessness. To prevent the ticks from escaping, she placed the container back on the holder. But Nicole didn't notice that, due to the doctor's shout just now, she hadn't closed the octopus's container properly. Shortly after the two left, the octopus sensed an opportunity. It stretched out its tentacles and grabbed the sides of the container. Using the principle of ejection, the octopus escaped successfully. Meanwhile, Lena gathered all the crew members. She told everyone about the alien's re-escape. Lena told everyone to stay alert and be careful of their surroundings. Learning that the alien had escaped again, Ian, who was eating, suddenly choked. In a panic, he picked up Nicole's water glass, but Ian didn't notice that the glass was full of tick larvae. Jason planned to form a search team to search the spaceship, but before forming the team, he needed to find the intruder. Jason asked the crew members to hand over their duty logs. and he would investigate them one by one. Upon hearing Jason's words, the crew members felt that Jason was invading their privacy, but Jason didn't care. He demanded that everyone follow his instructions. Whoever refused to obey the order, he had the right to lock them up. Upon hearing Jason's warning, the crew members who had been indignant just now fell silent instantly. They had to hand over their duty logs, but after checking all the logs, Jason found that none of the crew members were abnormal. At the time of the sample leakage, the crew members were all in their respective areas, never leaving their posts. After ruling out the on-duty crew members, Jason investigated the crew members in hibernation. In the wake-up logs, he found a suspicious target. The spaceship's engineer had woken up one day before the sample leakage. He checked the engineer's emails and calls, and found that the engineer had been in frequent contact with a specific email address. He opened the email and sure enough, found something fishy. What appeared on the screen was a video recording of the engineer in Boyka. It turned out that because the mission cycle was as long as 65 years, the engineer thought the pay was too low, so he took the initiative to contact Prodigy Technologies and told Boyka about the company's transportation mission. To obtain these samples, Boyka made a promise to the engineer. As long as he could make the spaceship land in Prodigy Technologies' territory, the company would apply the latest android technology to him to achieve immortality. The engineer was tempted by Boyka's offer. After the spaceship entered the solar system, the engineer woke up from hibernation. He used hacking technology to modify the spaceship's route, and then sabotaged the navigation system, and the person who sneaked into the sealed area was also the engineer. But while sabotaging the navigation system, the engineer accidentally damaged the storage cabinet, causing the sample leakage. Having discovered the truth, Jason rushed to the hibernation area immediately, but the engineer had already disappeared. While Jason was busy investigating, Lena and Nicole also discovered that the octopus had escaped from the container. Fortunately, Lena reacted quickly. At the moment she found the sample had escaped, she sealed off the cabin. Unlike other areas, the laboratory cabin had no exits. Even if the sample escaped, it couldn't get out. She locked the cabin, and reported the sample escape. In the damaged cabin, Ian and the maintenance worker were cleaning up the hole, but halfway through the work, Ian suddenly started vomiting blood violently, then he fainted. Seeing Ian faint, the maintenance worker sent him to the medical cabin immediately. The doctor scanned Ian's body and found an alien larva inside him. The doctor thought that as long as the larva was removed, Ian could survive. She cut open Ian's chest and prepared to perform the operation. Learning that Ian had been parasitized by an alien, Lena sounded the alarm immediately. Jason, who heard the alarm, also rushed to the scene. Seeing that the doctor was about to perform the operation, Jason tried to stop her, but before he could finish speaking, another accident occurred. Seeing the two faint, Lena quickly activated the disinfection system. However, after the disinfection was completed, Lena was horrified to find that the three people in the operating room had no vital signs, while the ticks were unaffected. Seeing this, Lena was completely stunned. Only then did she realize that these creatures were so terrifying. But the terrible things had just begun. At this moment, the assistant hurried to find Jason. The escaped alien had appeared. It turned out that while everyone was rushing over, the alien had entered the cabin through the air vent. Old Deng, who was being investigated, was killed by the monster. Considering the increased leakage level, Jason decided to take over the captain's position. He ordered everyone to gather at the bridge, then seal all the entrances and exits of the cabin. As long as they could enter Earth's orbit, the company would send a clearance team to assist. Their top priority now was to find a way to correct the altered route. Jason told Lena and the maintenance worker to go to the engine room to correct the route, while he and the assistant prepared to go to the hibernation area to wake up the other crew members. As long as everyone hid in the bridge, the monster couldn't get in. But on the way, Jason accidentally encountered the previously awakened engineer. A firefight broke out between the two in the corridor. The assistant was shot once. In a panic, Jason took the injured assistant and hid in the laboratory. Taking advantage of the engineer's inattention, Jason circled behind him and killed him with a single knife. But Jason didn't notice that the leaked samples had escaped because the cabin door was open. Meanwhile, Lena, who was on her way to the engine room, was paying tribute to the deceased Brown. But as Lena was sighing, she looked up and saw a monster appearing behind her. Staring at the suddenly appearing alien, Lena froze in place. Fortunately, she had fought this kind of monster on the planet before. Lena didn't panic and quietly picked up her gun. But just as she was about to draw her weapon, the alien's tail suddenly swept over. Fortunately, Lena reacted quickly. She ran out before the alien could attack. She ran through the corridor and hid in the engine room. Lena wanted to warn the maintenance worker, but when she turned around, she found that the maintenance worker was acting strangely. It turned out that the escaped octopus had targeted the maintenance worker. Before Lena could catch her breath, the maintenance worker slapped her unconscious, lingering at the door for a few minutes. The alien that couldn't get in had to leave. Shortly after the alien left, Jason crawled out of the air vent. He opened the steel door of the engine room and saw the unconscious Lena. But just as Jason was about to kill the maintenance worker, the alien that had left earlier suddenly turned back. Fortunately, Jason reacted quickly. He shot and injured the maintenance worker, then turned around and ran into a nearby passage. But the injured maintenance worker didn't chase Jason. Instead, he pounced on the alien. It turned out that the octopus had sensed the alien's strength. It wanted to parasitize the alien. The two monsters began to attack each other in the cabin. At this moment, the unconscious Lena also woke up. Taking advantage of the two monsters' entanglement, she fled to the corridor and prepared to go to the bridge. But when she arrived at the control room, she found Jason writing the navigation log inside. Lena wanted Jason to open the door, but Jason turned around and welded the steel door shut. Just as Lena fell into despair, the alien also chased after her. The unlucky Lena was torn to pieces by the alien. After killing Lena, the alien smashed open the steel door. Before the alien entered, Jason hid in the hibernation pod in the secret room. What followed was the plot of the spaceship crashing. Learning that the sample leakage was indeed related to Prodigy Technologies, the person in charge of Wayland Corporation looked depressed. Although the samples were lost, the person in charge did not blame Jason. She told Jason to take some time to rest. The company was negotiating with Prodigy Technologies in the hope of retrieving the samples, but Jason thought the person in charge was too naive. Boyka would never hand over the samples. The only way to get the samples back was to take military action. The person in charge also thought this made sense. She granted Jason the highest authority to mobilize all of the company's resources. While Jason was figuring out how to retrieve the samples, Wendy also made some progress. But after researching for several days, she still couldn't understand the alien's way of communication. However, Wendy did make some progress. She could already sense the alien's joys and sorrows through specific frequencies. To Wendy's greater surprise, the alien's growth rate was extremely fast. Within just a few weeks, the alien that had been nurtured in the glass tank had transformed from a tadpole-like creature into a reptile. It not only grew limbs, but also possessed thinking abilities comparable to humans. Staring at the monster in the laboratory, Matt felt a little scared. He had encountered the fully grown alien on the spaceship before. This kind of monster was terrifying in both speed and attack power. Matt was worried that the company was playing with fire and inviting destruction. But he was just a nobody and couldn't change the company's decision. While Wendy was busy, Arthur also conducted a comprehensive examination of Lily, but the scanner found no abnormalities in Lily's body. Lila speculated that the reason Lily thought she was pregnant might be due to a flaw in her brain system. This flaw wasn't caused by a chip short circuit, but might be related to Lily's experiences, especially the previous spaceship mission. Lila's suggestion was to delete Lily's recent memories, then use psychological suggestion to help Lily re-establish her way of thinking. However, Lila's proposal was rejected by Arthur. He was worried that deleting the memories would cause psychological problems for Lily, which would lead to more troubles, but the assistant didn't care about this. He told Lila to execute the program immediately. It turned out that the company had invested a lot of resources in the android project. The resources required for each android were an astronomical figure. Therefore, once a flaw was found in a synthetic body, it had to be destroyed. Moreover, the company's current focus was on those alien samples. If the android project showed no hope, it would most likely be shut down by the company. Upon hearing the assistant's words, Arthur and Lila were both stunned. But before they could speak, the assistant left the laboratory directly. Staring at the domineering assistant, Lila executed the deletion command. All of Lily's recent memories were deleted, but Lila didn't know that. This action of hers laid the groundwork for the subsequent alien leakage. Meanwhile, Amanda, the person in charge of Wayland, with the mediation of the other three companies, finally met with Boyka. Amanda wanted to retrieve the samples and offered compensation. Wayland could pay Prodigy Technologies a large sum of money, but Boyka didn't want to hand over the samples. He made an excuse that the spaceship had caused the death of thousands of people, wanting Wayland to first propose a reasonable compensation plan. As for the samples on the spaceship, Boyka had already prepared an excuse. He took out the Deep Space Exploration Treaty, accusing Wayland of violating the regulations by secretly bringing dangerous alien species back to Earth. Prodigy Technologies was only following the treaty to collect dangerous goods and conduct unified disposal. Listening to Boyka's accusation, Amanda had obviously prepared in advance. She stated that the company could offer $10 billion for compensation, but Boyka didn't give her a chance. He directly demanded a sky-high price of $20 billion. Boyka originally thought Wayland would refuse, but to his surprise, Amanda agreed without hesitation. Staring at the decisive Amanda, Boyka finally realized that he had fallen into a trap. He took out other treaties and tried to prevaricate, but Amanda didn't give him a chance and raised the compensation again.
50 billion. And we take possession immediately.
Upon hearing Amanda's compensation offer, Boyka was also stunned. Although he knew the alien samples were precious, he never imagined that Wayland would be willing to offer $50 billion in compensation. Even for Prodigy Technologies, it would take several years to earn that much money. But he had already said it, and he couldn't go back on his word. To buy time, Boyka took out the Deep Space Exploration Treaty again, using the quarantine provisions in the treaty as an excuse. He forcibly detained the samples. Only after the compensation was paid in full, and the quarantine period expired could the samples be handed over. Although Amanda was annoyed by Boyka's excuse, she had no choice, but at least she had obtained a commitment. But Boyka didn't know that Wayland had no intention of paying the compensation, because Jason had already started his operation. On the way out, Jason and Aaron crossed paths. Staring at Jason beside him, Aaron said an inexplicable sentence.
Look at you. The almost human, self-hating machine. You must envy me. Sure.
At the Dream Island base, Gutua was following Aaron's instructions to feed the laboratory samples, but when feeding the ticks, the steel door of the feeding cabin malfunctioned. If the cabin door couldn't be closed, the feeding couldn't be activated. According to the rules, Gutua should have contacted the maintenance staff for repairs. However, the lazy Gutua didn't contact the workers. Instead, he entered the isolation cabin without permission. He used his foot to hold the steel door open and tried to send the food in. But just as he was delivering the food, the goat nearby bumped into the glass wall and scared Gutua, trapping him inside the isolation cabin. Seeing someone enter, the ticks crawled out of their nests. The unlucky Gutua lay motionless on the ground. In the monitoring room, Matt found Arthur, who was packing his things. Matt had learned that Arthur was fired. He wanted to ask Arthur some questions about Wendy before he left, but the monitoring room was full of cameras. Even if Arthur knew, he couldn't tell Matt, but he still left a way out, pretending to explain something. Arthur quietly typed a string of special numbers on the computer. This string of numbers was Wendy's code. Matt immediately understood what Arthur meant. At this moment, the system sent a notification, alerting the staff that Gutua's signal was lost. Arthur turned on the tracking immediately, and saw that Gutua was trapped in the laboratory. He rushed to the laboratory at once. At the door, he met Riley, who was about to sneak into the laboratory. It turned out that Jason had taken Riley's mother hostage, demanding that he steal the samples, but Riley didn't know the password and couldn't get in. Seeing Riley at the door too, Arthur thought he had come to rescue Gutua. Arthur didn't think much of it, entered the password, and opened the door. Seeing that Gutua was trapped in the isolation cabin, Arthur opened the cabin door, but he didn't notice that Riley had seen him enter the password. While Arthur was rescuing Gutua, Riley quietly opened the doors of the other isolation cabins. When Arthur came to his senses, Riley was gone. Before he could react, a facehugger pounced on him. The facehugger latched onto Arthur and began to parasitize him. Seeing that the plan had succeeded, Riley entered the laboratory again. Following Jason's instructions, he dragged the parasitized Arthur into the air vent. But while Riley was busy, the ticks in the isolation cabin also escaped. Just as the ticks were about to catch up, Riley sealed the pipeline, and the scene of the alien leakage was also captured by Aaron, who had returned through the surveillance camera, but he didn't report it.
Everything okay?
Affirmative.
Afraid that things would be exposed, Riley brought Arthur back from the air vent to his room and hid him under the bed. Staring at the parasitized Arthur, Riley felt very scared, worried that Arthur might be hungry. He even got some nutrient solution. Just as he was feeding him, Smith came to his room. The flustered Riley quickly pushed the bed back in place, but the careless Riley didn't notice that Arthur's arm was still sticking out.
Mr. Person, what did you do?
Seeing that Arthur was parasitized, Smith wanted to report it to his superiors, but Riley pulled him back. He told Smith about how Jason had threatened him with his parents. He also assured Smith that Arthur wasn't dead, he was just asleep. As long as he could hand Arthur over to Jason, Wayland's doctors would be able to wake him up. Begged by Riley, the immature Smith believed him. Taking advantage of the late night, they carried Arthur out of the dormitory and headed toward the seaside where they had agreed to meet Jason. While the two were busy, Aaron was also dealing with the leakage in the laboratory. Staring at the aliens scurrying around in the laboratory, the staff took out electric batons and rounded up all the escaped aliens. Learning of the alien leakage, Boyka also rushed over, but Aaron didn't tell him about Riley and Arthur. He only said that the leakage was caused by Gutua's carelessness. The reason why the aliens attacked the androids, Aaron suspected, might be due to a food shortage. In his research, he had found that although the aliens usually only ate organic matter, when food was scarce, they would also eat things containing minerals, and the white blood in the androids was rich in minerals. Staring at Gutua on the ground, Boyka looked distressed. It turned out that a new android was worth 6 billion. He told Aaron to revise the laboratory rules. Except for Aaron and Wendy, no other new androids were allowed to enter the laboratory. At this moment, Wendy also arrived at the laboratory. Seeing Gutua's tragic state, Wendy couldn't believe it. Hadn't they said these monsters wouldn't attack androids? Curious, Wendy tried to step forward to check but was stopped by Aaron. Wendy wanted to tell the other companions about Gutua, but Boyka was worried about scaring the other androids. Wendy didn't care about that. She turned around and tried to leave. but the guards at the door stopped her. Staring at the two guards, Wendy whistled. Seeing that the aliens actually responded, Boyka and Aaron were both stunned. It turned out that after several weeks of effort, Wendy had learned how to communicate with the aliens. However, her way of communication was still in the initial stage. She could only have simple exchanges with the aliens. Learning that the aliens had leaked, Matt also felt that the base was unsafe. He found Wendy and wanted to take her away from the base. The string of numbers he had obtained from Arthur earlier was not only Wendy's identity information, but also an unlock key. As long as this string of numbers was entered into the computer, Wendy could break free from the company's control. He had turned off Wendy's positioning before coming. Persuaded by Matt, Wendy also thought the base might be unsafe, but she wanted to take everyone away. But Matt thought it was unrealistic. He didn't have the keys for the others to unlock their control, and the company could find everyone's location with just a glance at the computer. But Wendy didn't care if they were leaving. Everyone was leaving together. Staring at the stubborn Wendy, Matt had to agree. They went to the dormitories of the other team members. Wendy told Lily and the others about the laboratory leakage, wanting to take everyone away with her. Lily agreed to leave with Wendy. It turned out that the deletion program Lila had run earlier had not completely erased all the memories in Lily's mind. After several days of recovery, Lily's memories had been restored, but Nibby was unwilling to leave. The base was her home, and she wanted to stay. Wendy didn't force her. She only asked Nibby to promise not to reveal everyone's whereabouts. With that, Wendy turned to the monitor on the wall. With a light tap, the screen switched to the laboratory. Before the staff could react, the steel doors holding the aliens were opened. Meanwhile, Boyka also discovered that the positioning had been lost. By tracing the logs, Boyka found that the authority to turn off the positioning belonged to Arthur's code. He found Lila immediately, wanting to ask why Arthur had turned off the positioning, but Lila had no idea that the positioning had been turned off. He told Boyka that Arthur had been fired by the assistant. Learning that Arthur had been fired, Boyka was also confused. Just as he was wondering, the alarm for another experimental subject leakage suddenly sounded in the base. Boyka had to interrupt the investigation and rush to the laboratory. But by the time he arrived with his men, the aliens had already escaped. In the basement corridor, Riley and Smith were carrying Arthur, preparing to head to the meeting point agreed with Jason. But while waiting for the elevator, Aaron suddenly appeared in the corridor. Seeing Aaron, both Riley and Smith panicked. Before Aaron could speak, Riley told him everything about Jason. But after hearing Riley's explanation, Aaron didn't blame them. Instead, he even pointed them to a way out.
I mean, what are you doing going that way? The quickest way to the beach is to take the secure elevator.
Upon hearing Aaron's words, Smith and Riley were both stunned. But Aaron looked calm, even urging them to leave quickly. Urged by Aaron, the two entered the elevator, but as soon as they arrived at the back mountain, they encountered a patrol team. Fortunately, Riley reacted quickly. They hid in the grass by the road and avoided the patrol. But when Riley looked back, he found that Arthur was gone from the ground. The two searched everywhere, but couldn't find the missing Arthur. Just as Riley was feeling frustrated, a facehugger suddenly jumped out of the grass, staring at Arthur not far away. Riley was also confused, but Arthur didn't remember what had happened. He only remembered that he was dealing with an emergency in the laboratory, and then discovered the experimental subject leakage. Seeing that Arthur had forgotten everything, Riley had to lie. He said there had been a toxic gas leak in the laboratory, and everyone was evacuating. Upon hearing Riley's explanation, Arthur pieced together his lost memories. He didn't think much more about it, and led the two toward the evacuation point by the sea. After walking through the forest, the trio arrived at the seaside. But when they got near the beach, Arthur suddenly remembered a scene from the laboratory. He stopped the two and asked what was really going on. But before Arthur could finish speaking, he suddenly felt something squirming in his chest. Before he could react, an alien burst out of his chest. Staring at the escaping alien, Riley wanted to chase after it, but by the time he ran over, the alien had already disappeared. Staring at Arthur on the ground, Smith panicked too. He finally realized he had been deceived. Smith wanted to go back and report the incident, but Riley refused. He dragged Arthur, preparing to meet Jason at the seaside. Helpless, Smith had to follow along. But when the two arrived at the so-called meeting point, there was nothing there. Riley thought he had been tricked. Just as he was feeling frustrated, three fully armed soldiers suddenly emerged from the sea. Riley looked closely and saw that the person was Jason, and in other areas of the beach, two Wayland teams also appeared nearby. The naive Riley still held on to a glimmer of hope. He thought Jason could save Arthur.
I tried. I swear. I tried. I did everything you asked me to.
If that were true, I wouldn't be standing over a hollow corpse.
Learning that the alien had already hatched, Jason's expression turned even darker. He didn't want to dwell on it and directly ordered his men to take Riley into custody. Meanwhile, Wendy, Matt, and the others also arrived at the back mountain. Matt had already prepared everything in advance. There was a dock at the back mountain, with a speedboat that could take them away from the base, but when the three reached a cliff, they saw several tombstones. The tombstones were inscribed with their previous names. Staring at the tombstones not far away, Matt remembered his previous conversation with the assistant. It turned out that the company's so-called transfer was just transferring everyone's memories and ways of thinking into android bodies. The real them had actually passed away long ago. Although he had long known the truth, Matt still found it hard to accept. But this wasn't the time to dwell on it. Urged by Matt, the three entered the forest. But as soon as they reached the foot of the mountain, they were spotted by an infiltrating Weyland team. Seeing that they were new androids, the leading squad leader wanted to take them back to the company. But just as the soldiers were about to act, Wendy emitted sound waves and summoned the aliens. The Weyland team was quickly eliminated. Staring at the aliens not far away, Matt was completely stunned. But Wendy told him not to panic. The aliens wouldn't hurt them. After eliminating the team, the aliens took the initiative to approach. Wendy gave an order, and the aliens left obediently, but the three didn't notice that shortly after they left, the alien that had hatched from Arthur's body also appeared nearby. Sensing the presence of companions around, the alien wanted to go over to join them, but a large net suddenly fell from the sky and caught it. Leaving the forest, the three arrived at the dock, but before Matt could start the speedboat, a fully armed team appeared around them. Matt looked back and found that the person leading the team was a friend from the rescue team. It turned out that their every move had been under the company's control. Staring at Lily holding a doll, a soldier snatched the doll and threw it into the water, but his action enraged Lily. The furious Lily crushed the soldier's head with her bare hands. The situation on the scene became more and more chaotic. Wendy wanted to call the aliens for help, but Matt stopped her. If the aliens appeared, everyone would be killed. To stop Lily, a soldier took out a stun gun. Wendy pushed Matt aside and tried to stop the soldier, but Wendy didn't notice that the pushed aside Matt had picked up a gun from the ground and aimed it at Lily. Meanwhile, to retrieve the samples, Jason had to take the risk of sneaking into Prodigy Technologies' base, but as soon as they reached the entrance, they were surrounded by Aaron and his men. The alien that had escaped from Arthur's body earlier was also captured by Aaron.
Drop your weapons. Nobody likes a sore loser.
It turned out that this was all Aaron's trap. He wasn't a spy for Weyland at all. The reason Aaron helped Riley and Smith escape was simply to lure Jason into the trap, and the reason Aaron did this was just to let the company know that, even though he was an older model android, he wasn't inferior to the new models. To capture the escaped alien, Boyka dispatched all the teams on the island, but the alien's strength exceeded Boyka's expectations. The escaped alien not only eliminated the pursuing teams, but also disappeared without a trace again. What frustrated Boyka even more was that Jason and his men had cut the undersea optical cable when sneaking in, forcing the communication on Dream Island to be interrupted. Staring at Wendy and the other androids who had betrayed him, Boyka fell into confusion. What he wanted to create wasn't mechanical androids that only followed orders, but a new type of human that could replace humans. This type of android would not only have independent thinking abilities, but also could become stronger through transformation and upgrades. But Boyka, who was proficient in scientific research, ultimately underestimated human nature. Although human consciousness had endowed the androids with souls, it was precisely because of their independent personalities that they had become uncontrollable. Boyka felt a little dazed. Could it be that his research direction was wrong? Meanwhile, Wendy, who was locked up, also began to question the company's research. In fact, she was truly grateful to Boyka in her heart. She didn't want to betray Boyka either. She just wanted to go home and see her father. During her treatment at the base, Wendy longed for her father to come see her every day, but neither her father nor her brother had ever appeared, which made Wendy miss her hometown deeply. Wendy felt a little worried. She speculated that because of this betrayal, everyone might be destroyed by the company. Upon hearing Wendy's worries, Smith and the others also thought it made sense. But the detention room was equipped with high-voltage electrical protection. Even if they wanted to escape, they couldn't. Staring at the camera not far away, Wendy came up with a plan. In the forest, the alien also sensed Wendy's call. It turned around and ran into the forest, sneaking into a sewage outlet. Seeing that Wendy was trying to summon the alien, Boyka, who was in the office, also noticed this scene. But before he could respond, the surveillance equipment in the base lost its feed. He immediately sent someone to repair the surveillance. But Boyka didn't notice that in addition to summoning the alien, Wendy had also secretly opened the cage holding Jason. In the detention room, the imprisoned Jason was also figuring out how to escape. He carefully observed his surroundings, looking for a way out. At this moment, he accidentally found that the protective switch of the cage was open. This sudden discovery made Jason realize that someone was helping him secretly. He pretended to chat with the guard, luring him to the entrance. After killing the guard, Jason opened the protective device, restraining his arms, but the escaped Jason didn't rush to contact headquarters. Instead, he rushed to the laboratory where the alien samples were stored. At this time, Aaron was repairing the damaged controller, but halfway through his work, Jason appeared behind him. Aaron reacted quickly and picked up the weapon on the table. Although both were the same generation of androids, Aaron's physical performance was clearly not as strong as Jason's. After less than 2 rounds of fighting, he was pinned to the ground by Jason and brutally beaten, but the two fighting didn't notice that Aaron's bullet had hit the glass cabin containing the samples earlier. Seizing the opportunity, the alien sample smashed the glass, escaping from the test cabin. Jason was about to turn around when he was ambushed by the severely injured Aaron. Seeing that Jason was killed, Wendy in the detention room felt a little frustrated, but she didn't care much. Jason was just a decoy she had released to draw fire. In the base, the alien had successfully sneaked in through the sewage pipe. Just as Wendy was about to summon the alien, Boyka suddenly arrived at the detention room. He had originally come to persuade Wendy and the others, but because of the previous deception, no one believed him anymore. Boyka tried to make up a new lie, but Wendy unleashed her special skill.
What's the story?
Seeing that the door to the confinement room was open, Boyka in the corridor was also stunned, but he had not given Wendy any permission. How did Wendy do it? Wendy's move filled Boyka with both joy and worry. He walked into the cell and told everyone about himself, why he had created them. It turned out that Boyka came from an ordinary family. His father was an alcoholic and violent towards his family all day long. The 6-year-old Boyka would be beaten black and blue every once in a while. Despite being born into an unfortunate family, the intelligent Boyka showed amazing talent at the age of 6. He used scrap parts to piece together a shabby synthetic human. One evening, Boyka ordered the synthetic human to kill his father. The experiences of his childhood made Boyka hold a special expectation for synthetic humans as well. He wanted to explore a new form of life that possesses human thinking abilities and the physical performance of synthetic humans. To achieve this goal, Boyka founded Prodigy technology.
Before people find out they can be immortal for a low, low price.
We don't belong to you.
Of course. You do, sweeties. You're floor models.
Learning that they were just display pieces, Wendy and the others all showed expressions of dissatisfaction. The guard nearby also noticed that the atmosphere was tense. He pulled out his weapon and tried to threaten everyone to stay quiet. But before the guard could finish speaking, Lily struck first. The unlucky guard was smashed into meat paste on the spot. Staring at the guard's horrific death, Boyka was also stunned. Staring at the fleeing Boyka, Riley wanted to chase but was stopped by Wendy. She told everyone to first take control of Aaron and the others, and that she would deal with Boyka personally. In the base, the sneaked-in alien had already started its slaughter. A patrol team was eliminated in no time. Matt, who had escaped from the detention room, went to Wendy's quarters. He thought Wendy was imprisoned there, but when he entered, he found the room empty. Just as Matt was wondering, the bald assistant appeared. The assistant said Boyka wanted to talk to him, and that Wendy was in the office too. Matt didn't think much and followed the assistant, but as soon as he entered the room, the assistant suddenly locked the steel door from the inside. Realizing something was wrong, Matt turned around, only to see the parasitized lamb in the corner. Sensing a higher-level life form, the octopus pounced. Fortunately, Matt reacted quickly. He hid in the test cabin where the lamb was kept, but before he could catch his breath, the octopus squeezed in through the feeding port. In a panic, Matt escaped from the test cabin, but when he reached the door, he found it locked. Matt was about to turn around. When the octopus lunged at him, he instinctively grabbed the octopus with his hand, but was quickly wrapped up by its tentacles. Fortunately, Wendy arrived just in time. She pulled the octopus away. Regaining his composure, Matt picked up an iron rod, wanting to finish it off for good. Unexpectedly, the assistant appeared behind him and knocked him unconscious. Seeing Matt knocked out, Wendy tried to resist, but she was no match for the assistant. The bald assistant easily sent Wendy flying. It turned out the assistant was no ordinary person. He was the company's new model android, possessing not only independent thinking, but also physical performance far superior to Wendy and the others. The assistant turned around to subdue Wendy, but as he did, Wendy suddenly shouted, and the assistant froze in place. It turned out that despite his strength, the assistant required an internet connection to function. Realizing this, Wendy cut off the network immediately, and the assistant lost all mobility. But Wendy didn't notice that, during her fight with the assistant, the octopus that had been knocked away had sneaked into the sewer. At the same time, Boyka had reached the aircraft cabin. He planned to escape the base by airship, but Boyka didn't notice that an alien was lurking above him. Staring at the suddenly appearing alien and Wendy, Boyka panicked. Even though he was terrified, he knew Wendy wouldn't kill him. Matt knocked Boyka unconscious in the base. The captive samples had also escaped from the laboratory. The team dispatched for backup was attacked by the alien samples. As the base descended into chaos, Wayland's fleet arrived at Dream Island, but no one noticed that the escaped octopus had reached the seaside through the sewage outlet. It found Arthur, who had been washed ashore, and parasitized him through his eye socket. So, can Wayland retrieve all the samples? Can Wendy break free from the company's control? The above is all the content of Alien, Earth 2025 Season 1. As the first TV series in the Alien universe, the show has successfully expanded the breadth of the world. The power landscape of the 6 major corporations fills the historical gaps of the franchise. The tripartite division of androids, enhanced humans, and hybrids enriches the lineage of artificial life. The connection between Earth and space gives the entire universe more depth, but the price of breadth is a compromise in depth. The Xenomorphs are reduced to supporting roles, the engineer civilization isn't mentioned, and the core conflict of immortality competition fails to be fully developed, instead diluted by the multi-threaded narrative. When new species like fly-like alien creatures and blood-sucking worms appear in clusters, they fail to establish a food chain connection with the alien universe, inevitably making people question the creative mindset of enriching for the sake of enrichment. What is commendable is that the series continues the exploration direction of Scott's later works, shifting the focus from alien creatures to humans themselves. The image of white blood and red blood blending is like a visual inquiry into the boundary between humans and androids. The foreshadowing of a greater conspiracy at the end, though hasty, lays the groundwork for connecting with the original films. Today's commentary ends here. Thank you for watching. For those who enjoyed it, please subscribe to our channel. See you next time.